Ahora tenemos con nosotros al señor Tomás Grechening. Él es fundador de RISE. Es un proveedor de tecnología financiera, es una fintech que opera en Viena con un exitoso historial mundial en transformaciones digitales opera con varias corporaciones, construyendo plataformas intermedias y operando nuevos ecosistemas entre bancas, pagos, comerciantes, hasta esquema de pagos nacionales independientes y sus infraestructuras. Démosle por favor la bienvenida al señor Tomás Grechening.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Salinas and his team, for the kind invitation. I guess it's my role to speak a little bit about the European idea of fintech, and it's a special and interesting issue to talk about bridging of so different things. Let me see. Can you hear this? No. Of talking about so different things as the community of large corporates, then the community of fintechs where you all have the appropriate impression, and a different animal of the university research. And even though my previous speaker was showing the output of long-term academic work, I believe there is a lot of distance between all three. And it's a privilege to talk a little bit about that, and I think it's possible. First of all, a little bit about us. We are coming out of university, means originally we're a research institute and we did a spin-off, and now it's about 350 experts in a special situation in Austria. Because the IT place in Austria has been quite closed for long, and there was somebody necessary doing the heavy jobs, which helps a lot and created a strong impetus for us as a company. For example, we did health integration and health infrastructure systems in Austria. We connected 600 banks. That's the total amount of banks that retail banks that do exist in Austria, into one platform, and made this platform flexible so that the debit card maestro, which is underlying MasterCard Visa scheme, it can be connected for each bank easily, and you can use the mobile as if it would be a credit card. We did some other jobs, for example, the Vienna airport, and by that way, still being 350 people, 10% of us is still at university, at the Vienna University of Technology, and we still go on doing research, master theses and PhDs and papers. There we call it as industrial software. I myself, I'm a professor for software engineering, and we try to expand this kind of spirit to other regional universities, because we have seen this drastic form of doing practical work and then trying to apply it in science and research is not so popular and or not so common, and I will explain why. So I talked about these examples. Important for you to understand, we're not only in engineering such systems, sometimes we do operate them. And I would like to say, looking forward into what I will tell you about large corporates and about legacy systems in large corporates, it's pretty much important that you're capable of operating systems yourself, as long as these systems are still fresh and young. Especially when it goes about security-oriented systems, payment systems, and accounting, it's extremely important that you are in control of the system parts end-to-end on a long way. Finalize this part of the intro. We are organized quite normally, like any large integrator would be. There are industries where obviously the financial industry part has a long tradition, We have done some heavy jobs in Germany and Austria in the sector. As we are strongly coming out of the technical university, the engineering part is extremely important for us. We have been on the mobile early before others have been on the mobile, and we did blockchain implementations 8 years ago. Our first applications were non-central voting systems. So imagine that we don't have a barrier in technology, and we do well understand what can we expect from a technology and what can we not expect. That helps a lot, but it's not the key point, you will find out. We also do have guys, and that's at least 20% of our people, who can manage large projects. And we think this is pretty much important, because one of the downsides of most fintechs is they don't have the manpower to run, organize, and manage a larger project, which sometimes is necessary when you work with a large corporate. Finally, there is a connection between our university part and our industry part, and I'm not going to go into detail here. If we can discuss it later on for those who come from the academic side, I'm very happy to proceed and explain it to you. I want to start the talk after explaining what is our background. I want to start the talk in explaining about some experiences we do have in looking into what is today called fintech, and we think there's much more behind that's usually explained in talks going into the detail of, like we saw before in landing. I saw pretty much in the talk in the morning about the ecosystem, which was explained because it showed a lot of these experiences that have to be respected. Don't go through all the details and the lines. I'm just listing here the lots of issues that are there in the industrial view on information technology for the financial industry. And there is issues that are strong in Europe, like it was mentioned in the morning about PSD2. There is other issues which I will bring up now. I don't know how far you are familiar who currently, for example, controls SWIFT. SWIFT should be, for Europe, an organization in Belgium. Practically, it's controlled by the American Ministry of Finance. And it brings me to a point which I believe in the whole fintech area, which is extremely important. We should head for self-definition and self-control in that area, because when it goes into the large of the facts of transactions that are done in payment, it's actually important that every country that votes for its own politicians is in control of its financial transactions on the long run. So if you look at the bold letters at the end, it's just showing these typical questions. Obviously, it's interesting how in the future clients will behave. How often will they change an account? How often will they change a bank? It's obvious today that wallets, payments, and accounts get into one, but it's not so clear in which region, in which environment, in which client area this will happen in 3, 5, or 15 years. It's obvious that it will happen, but the timing very much depends on region and situation and application. You all know these two guys, and I'm putting them here only to put out viewing into the whole sector of bridging fintechs and large corporates, banks and insurances together. We have to be aware of a thing that I call, or we call, a war on transactions. So that's why I used the Star Wars metaphor. We observe there is a war, call it a war on digital territory or war on transactions. And it's basically going to the point that the one who does your daily digital transactions is something like the digital landlord. And you all know there are some guys who are pretty strong in the moment. The one who succeeds in getting the customer used to him or to his platform, to his mobile bank platform, he owns the customer. And a lot of the fintech bonanza and investment stories are based on this story that if we have this amount of customers, then we can play this and that game. And you're all aware about this 100 or 200,000 fintechs in the world that are heavily invested, or some are not so invested. Obviously, sometimes the good ones are not invested. They cannot all survive. That's impossible. But this hope and this idea behind that brings the people in. So I am very open and direct in the point that I believe certain things like digital doors, health data, passport, IDs, payment data, internet profiles, I'm not so sure in what way they should go abroad. I'm pretty sure that after having a phase of being extremely global, there will be something like renationalizing transactions. And I think it's the work of national banks or the bank sector in an area to take care of the transactions that happen in a region, the critical ones, and payment and account transactions are definitely national or critical. And it's important that the data about these transactions also has a kind of control. Maybe it's my age that I am more sensitive to that, but I discuss to corporate people quite a lot. And I find out that within the qualified community, that's a serious thing. It's not a contradiction to fintechs. It's just saying things won't go so fast. And it's saying political authority and finding the guys and who control your money is an issue. And it's a national issue, I'm pretty sure. So I believe it's pretty interesting to discuss that digital transactions to a degree should be processed regionally. Doesn't mean you need to use original technology, but these aspects are important. So this war on transactions, and I give you very rapid examples what I mean by it, is going on, and it's unclear where it's going. And the second one, which is very strong in Europe as a discussion, not so much by the mass of users, but by the, call it intellectual elites and those who go through the development. That's what is called civil rights and the privacy in the net and the anonymity for certain transactions that go on. You all know these slides and informations about what is going in the internet in a minute. Important for here is just companies like Facebook and Google, they are currently winning digital territory every day because we all do the search work there. It's just a search, but at the end it's the beginning of stronger transactions. And it's like a puzzle. Think out yourself, why has it never happened that Facebook has not yet started a Facebook bank? There are things to discuss on it, but it's not important for the moment. What here is Austria as an example. You might, if I use Austria here as a metaphor, you could always use also Peru. There's a lot of transactions still in the country, especially in payment. But funnily enough, when we look at it at the point that transactions are in payment in Austria today are all done by schemes like MasterCard and Visa, and there is no national payment scheme strongly established, and I'm not sure if this will maintain like that. I'm mentioning here the MNOs also, because they have all gone away from payment. They have been disappointed. It was difficult for them to get into there. And I'm also mentioning mail and post, because they also have transactions today and they are fighting hard. Everybody knows that, to compete with companies, globals like Amazon, and they're not quite sure what to do. In this war of transactions, there is other players we don't observe so much, but they are interesting for us as technology company. which we observe strongly. It's the gaming and betting companies, because they are basically the only ones. I mentioned here PokerStars. It's a company we know the technology quite well, how it is done. They are the guys who know to do rapid transactions worldwide in a competitive way, and they do have the technology. We would need to do a national payment scheme, which technically everybody can do today. It's just a marketing issue and an issue how you grow it. So to finalize on this battleground here about payment, obviously today we have lots of companies, and I'm showing the whole acquiring, issuing, issuer scheme, which of companies which are today involved to do a payment, but in 10 years between the mobile and the customer and the endpoint where you have your account, most probably there won't be so many involved in between. Because it can be go both ways, but I'm sure there will be a huge part of transactions done in a different way. I've listed it here. It will depend on the country how the war on transactions in payment will be organized. It can be Visa, it can be Apple, it can be Google, it can be an old bank, even in Peru, who decides to do the national payment in Peru. It can be a mobile network operator. I guess most probably in the moment no, because they all behave the same way in terms of their management. But it could also be a marketing issue. So in Germany, where Bayern Munich is an extremely recognized brand, they could do Bayern Munich brand and they would have 10% of the market. The same would hold for Peru for the large soccer teams. And I go further. You all most probably know, just a few days ago, American president decided to stop the treaty on nuclear weapons with Iran. It's interesting, how will national payment in Iran look like in 10 years? And I would guess or pretty much believe it will be an issue of national self-definition. By the way, Russia has started MIR. It's not known internationally, but it's having a strong extension in terms of the national use. So there is a chance that national banks, and by the way, technically things like that are pretty easy. You could do a digital solace, and as a technology guy, I tell you, it's not necessary to do it as a cryptocurrency. You can do it as a central database, and it will work. It's just that these sectors haven't grabbed yet this kind of technology. I'm not using it for this kind of concept. And it's in a way a question of communication between the sectors. So in order to meet the timeline, I see tick down there. You don't see that, but I see it first time. I want to come a little bit more to a point that is important about bridging. Large corporates today, like the banks, they are coming to conferences like this, but it's not sure that on their C-level they will decide for extremely innovative projects. And the fact behind is the following. Fintech guys, and I'm living in all the three words, but if I look at me as a fintech personality, we shouldn't underestimate legacy. Legacy in all the large corporates is doing the use cases and daily transactions today, and that's the core business. This is what is going on there, and the business is going well. So no matter what is promised by big data and all that stuff, legacy is on the IT account, it will at least cost 80%. And if you don't convince the legacy guys to deal with you, it will be a war between the fintech and the legacy guys, and that's the basic thing and bridge that has to be created and done when we're discussing about integrating fintechs into large corporates. Okay, the other way around is fintechs grow so fast that they take away the the whole business from the old brands. But believe me, according to my experience with infrastructure, and payment is something like infrastructure, it doesn't go so fast. So better deal with the guys. And the second thing, which is underestimated, I also say this as an engineer, from the experience we have, don't underestimate the moment you integrate fintech technology in a legacy system, which will always be there in a large corporate. This is a large IT project. And you all know the problem of large IT projects. In the last third line from below, I have the quote, projects of 500k euro are completely different to projects of the size of 2 million euro, are completely different to projects of the size of 8 million. And one with 30 is another animal. That's the word I use here. What I mean is, it's not trivial. And on the other way around, when you try to connect a fintech idea into the legacy, it will become a large project, and somebody has to be there to understand in what way can it be done and meet the targets in time and in budget. And it's not simple. I use this picture from the film of Charlie Chaplin on industrialization to demonstrate how legacy looks like. No matter what your IT or what is outside told, worldwide, IT legacy in large insurances and in large banks, they do have this structure. Nobody likes to tell, but it's really a mess because it grew the last 30 years. And there is few large brands who have a clean setup. And ignoring that as a fintech doesn't work. That's a list I will skip. It's just showing lots of crunch points that happen in large IT projects when you bring fintechs and large corporates together. Even going further, just to show you what is the idea of this slide, when you build a large system, which a national payment system would be, then don't look at the technology at first. Look at public media, the political issues, the legal issues, the cultural criteria, because, and that's a kind of rule out of our experience, the upper thing, meaning here it's the lower level, will always beat the upper level. Meaning, no matter how good your technology is, no matter how good your use case is, there is always a dominance between the existing existing institutions and the dominance of the legal compliance and, let's call it, political cultural sector in an environment. You have to observe that, otherwise you will fail with your project. So, you fail if ignoring hidden rules and experiences. Let's take 3 simple examples. I go that fast to speak more in examples. Let's talk about a retail solution that a large retailer in a country provides, and this retail solution gives an account, a banking account, to every client of the retailer or to certain clients. It's a system which in Europe is under discussion, does make a lot of sense. It's a kind of prepaid account, and it will allow to save them disagio on the one hand, but also to be closer to the customers than they have been before. The second example here is Smart and Medium Enterprise Bank. It's a project we have been in planning, and it was targeting small entrepreneurs like the ones that were mentioned before, even entrepreneurs that are self-employed, and it's trying to make a specific digital bank serving these customers. Obviously an extremely interesting case for banks, because these people need money and they are ready to pay higher percentage of interest rates in order if they are in need, and they are obviously moving, and there is both sides' interest in getting the information and providing the information for the money. That's a pretty interesting product, which if you want to create it as a system on the market and you want to reach the numbers of enrollments and customers that do make sense, it's a huge project. It doesn't go out with a bootstrap technology. You have to think in terms of 20, 30 millions to do it. So, and the third project was on a national blockchain platform, not going into detail here. I skip all these slides just to explain to you that behind these ideas there is complete schemas and complete plannings of how the thing would be done for the retailers. The same, it's going on into social delivery service, which would be interesting for them based on these digital customers. The same is holding for this smart and medium enterprise bank. It's projects that have been thought through, and it's interesting why it's so difficult to find and to grow such a system into a really large new digital banking system. So let's skip that fast. How I make that fast? Why would typically, for example, a case like the retailer bank fail? I'll give you examples. The retailer's IT has to defend against big digitalization players, uses you for doing the innovation concept, but does not have the power to release the necessary budget. That's not a project that would be for free. If I would do it in Austria, on a retailer that is there on the whole nation, it will cost at least 30 million euro. It's not easy to get that money. So another example is C-level in the retail board doesn't understand the option, and it's definitely an extremely interesting option. And the CFO rejects it because it's too fancy, it's too early, it's too technical. So there's many reasons you can experience why this kind of innovation doesn't intrude into the legacy and the decision-making of the large brands. And I'm pretty sure to make it robust and good, the large brands are necessary to do it. In the second part, there is other reasons. For time reasons, I won't go into detail. Just understand here that if you don't have enough budget, the right promotion, and the right storyboarding is extremely important for such projects, you will fail. It's all about these large IT projects. It's not just putting an idea which might grow. You have to think through how you grow and do not underestimate it, because the rest is just always hope. If you really want to win customers in the large, want to do it substantial, it will be a large project. You have to have people who have experience with that and make sure you can land at the end. The blockchain, I'll skip a little bit, just when it's about a national blockchain platform, which comes up in different countries. For example, then in France, the most important thing, remember the slide before about the hierarchies in large projects, is the steering. If you don't find the right steering in such a setup, it doesn't matter how good your technology is, how wonderful you are with your APIs, it won't land, it won't work, it won't come up. So, summary about the bridge. Who is weak in what? And I didn't mention a lot about universities, doesn't matter. In the finalization, it will be understood. Fintechs, to my experience, are really weak in understanding integration into legacy systems. And they are very weak in how you grow from a proof of concept to a pilot, at the end to a rollout that goes inside. And universities, they are not good in delivery and engineering. They are not good in understanding large systems. That's something you don't learn in university. And they are not they are good in building innovative systems, but they are not good in building large innovative systems. So to come to the end, a nasty summary. Fintechs are somehow blind. Old banks are lame, and universities are virgins. Okay? So it doesn't matter. Still, if you go into a specific project, there will always be a way how you do it, and there is recommendations for each of them. And I'm not going to make the cookbook here complete, because on fintechs I did a little bit now in describing what they have to observe and what they have to look at. They have to respect what is going on in the core business and not just being in their own environment. And in old banks, they have to do, and I take this as an example out here, a little bit of looking into their reactions. I have seen banks doing a fintech fund in the bank. Santander in Spain did that. At the same time, they have a legacy innovation digital center, and the CEO has been appointed and has to do a lot of marketing on the future products that will be launched. I don't believe that's substantial. It's usually all the three things together, they won't end up. It's all about doing serious projects, and it's about this last line here: find a good way for a serious project, going from a proof of concept to sizing up to a serious pilot and then do a rollout. About universities, I summarize it to the point: it's universities who have to adapt to fintechs and to large corporates. They have to understand contractually, on a legal and formal way, which kind of contracts can they provide so that cooperation can work. They have to improve methodologically. In IT, all the innovation today is basically happening in industry. There are papers we write, but the top architects in the world, they don't write papers. And it's something where universities have to have some respect from the guys who do the new platforms. So there is a lot of things that can be done. For example, even in the career of a professor, if he's part of building a new system, it should not be bad for his career. So it's like a votum: don't only look at the papers that are written, also look on the systems that have been built in that career. So I finalize now with the war on transaction, and I give you a simple look on what is today's payment in Austria about, and I make a projection on Peru afterwards. In the Austrian market today, we have a turnover of 18 billion euro cash volume in debit cards and 60 million in credit cards. There is no micro-cash systems. It's a little bit done by the bigger plastic cards, but it's not yet established. The money they earn out of it is about $250 million a year. If we look at Peru as an example of a national payment system, if I take the GDP numbers you have, I would say, if I put it in parallel, 7 billion of euro in cash could be on debit cards, 6 billion of euro cash volume could be on credit cards. I know the real figures are completely different. I understand your form of economy, but it's a model. There is a potential of 20 billion transactions on the micropayment level, meaning small amounts that are done by the citizens. And the potential disagio out of that is somewhere in total around 150 million euro. The interesting thing, construction costs, including marketing and all that stuff, would be like 50 to 100 million euro, depending on the setup. And I'm talking also about terminals and point of sales and creating your own infrastructure of doing it. And the operations can be quite somewhere in the size of 15 to 35 million. And this is not abstract figures. This is figures that coming from real projects and planning. So it would be worthwhile for a large bank, a large brand, whoever it is, to do such a system, not only to get the cake of $1 billion after 10 years, but also to form something like a national transaction hub where you maintain the authority on the overall system. And if all Peru is too much, you start with an environment in Lima, because you are lucky in the sense that a third of the population is concentrated here in the area. So you can go with a little bit less money and you can stop earlier at the right time when you find out it wouldn't work here. So finalized. The concept about the national payment, I take like a summary of the cooperation. There is a chance today that if you put together two smart startups as crystallizer, I believe this young innovative spirits and the direct thinking is important. If you take a neutral integrator who can provide the technology, and we would be able to support such a process, because I believe we do have independent systems to provide that. And that's providing point of sales, that's providing the transaction machine. Transaction machine means like 2,000, 3,000 secure transactions a second. And by the way, that doesn't cost a lot today anymore. And if you can find a large brand, an MNO, a bank, a retailer, media, can be petrol station company, like it's happening in Slovenia currently. And then you could build such a system, and universities could have a strong role in doing a constant innovation, experiment, testing, research and science part within that. That's an ecosystem on top of what was presented in the morning that would be highly interesting, but it would need a union and a serious investment on one spot. Thank you very much.